Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Lau with Kenshan Crafts, and I just finished my May 2023 currently inked review, so go watch that video if you haven't already. But for today's video, it's going to be my July-August currently inked, and this is one of my favorite currently inked so far, and I just love it so much. But then there's some things that are a little surprising too, so I will share that with you in this video. And I will be writing over here some notes and grading, again, the same 3 grades: the color of the ink, the flow of the pen and ink, as well as the comfort of the pen. So let's get started. This first pen is Conklin Duragraph Turquoise Nights. I didn't think that I would like writing with it, but it was really nice. This is a stub nib, and at first, like when writing with it, it was skipping a lot. But I feel like that was because of an issue with the paper rather than the nib itself. So here is a sample of my writing. It is a little bit light, but it's definitely legible. I do love the green shimmers that are kind of like in there. You can maybe see a little bit. Yeah, it's not so prominent, which is fine. And then I also created a journal entry here. You can see how there are darker parts and then lighter parts. That's because I had to prime this nib every single time it started drying up. It felt like it was drying up. So you can see here in the letter FOR here, it was very light, and then you get that darker bit, but most of it was like the first sentences were very dark and very juicy flow, and then it got just very dry. And so I primed the nib, primed the feed again, and it got darker, more shading, and it got drier as I went. And so I had to do that for this shimmer ink. So this shimmer ink is definitely on the dry side. The fact that I had a stub nib really helped to make the writing experience a little bit better. For this pen, I am, say, Lovely ink. Flowed well at the beginning. Gets lighter the longer you write. Okay, so for that I'm going to give the color of this ink an 8.5. It's very legible at the beginning, and then it does get really light and dry. So the flow also an 8.5. It's a stub nib. It's a lovely flow at the beginning. It just tends to be a little slower in terms of flow. And then for comfort of this pen, it was very comfortable to write with. I'm going to give this a 9. All right. And then the second pen here is my Leonardo Memento Magico in Lion's Rock Green. Lovely, lovely green resin. And I had it inked up with Ferris Wheel Press Open Sea Atrium. So this ink is super dry. Let's see. So here is a sample of the writing. I can barely see the gold shimmers in this ink, which is a huge bummer. I was hoping that this medium nib would have showed more of the shimmer, but maybe the shimmer had just like disappeared. But the main thing is that I got shimmer for the first paragraph or the first sentence, and then no more shimmers afterwards. So this shimmer ink is not great. It's not a great flowing shimmer ink. Whereas the Wearing Ghouls, oh, I forgot to say, Wuthering Heights, that one, the shimmer was distributed very well. So for this pen, I will say beautiful green ink. Flow slows down and shimmers are not well distributed. Even when I like roll my pen from time to time, it does do that. So only towards the beginning do I get this beautiful gold shimmer coming out. Like, you lose the magic without the shimmer when the ink is supposed to have shimmer. If I just wanted this green, I would have just chosen a green like this. The flow wasn't terrible. It did keep up until later on. So for the color of this ink, I will give, you know, for the ink properties, I'm going to give it an 8. Because I know it's a dry ink and the shimmer isn't completely distributed, but when it is distributed well, it is beautiful. And then the flow of this pen and ink, I will give it an 8.5. Yeah, it's almost the same as my Conklin one. And then the comfort of this pen, a 9.5. I love, it's so comfortable in my hands. Okay. The next pen is my Leonardo Memento, Memento Zero, blue Aloha, and I put in there Dominant Industry Lake. Here I see is a very blue teal, but for some reason it oxidized and became so green. It's extremely green. Ink becomes a dark green, becomes its true color after some time. Good ink flow. Comfortable writer. Okay, so you can even see here how different that is. Like, it's just super saturated and a dark green, and then here it becomes the blue teal that I like. So that was, I didn't let that dry before I touched that, but here are some samples. You can see here I wrote on both pages. It's much, for some reason, it's greener over here and it's bluer here, and then the very like dried ink part is like this dark green, and I don't really like that. I do like these two though. Like, it's the same ink, but this one's more green, this one's more blue, and I just love it like that. So not a lot of shading in this ink, so it's more just a legible teal. Love Dominant Industry Lake. If you like that and you don't like too much shading, this is a good ink. For the color, it's quite variable, so I'm going to give it an 8.5. Actually, no. The dark green part here is not part of, it's not the ink's fault. I love this ink so much. Okay, right here, just writing, just scribbling here, that's beautiful. 9.5. For the ink flow, a 9.5. It is not too wet, not too dry. It is almost, you know, it's basically the perfect flow. And the comfort of the pen, 9.5. I love my Leonardo Memento Zeros. Very lovely to write long sessions with. The next pen is my Sailor Pro Gear Slim, the Summer Rain. And this one is inked up with Sailor Shikiri ZaZa. So ZaZa is like, it's a hit or miss ink for me. Some days I'll like it, other days it's just too boring, too bland. But it is a super lovely wet ink. Like, these medium fine nibs they write on the dry side, but this one just lubricates the nib so well, and it's so smooth. I can barely hear like a scratchy feedback when I write with it. So this ink, you can see here, it's pretty plain, like blue-black, almost leans on the blue-gray. Yeah, definitely like a blue-gray and blue-black. And it's like a stormy summer rain. So like, you know, putting it that way, it is what it says it is. ZaZa, which is the sound of summer rain. It's such a pleasant experience. This ink, such a nice flow. I just don't care too much for the color. So, well lubricated. Well lubricated ink, pleasant writing experience. Perfect sailor feedback. This pen wrote so well out of the box, and this ink just made it that much better. So for the ink properties, it's a lovely ink. If you like this shade of gray blue or blue black, I'm going to give this a 9 because I don't want the times where I get bored with it to affect it so much. But this ink, such a good flow in this. I'm going to give it a 10 for the flow. You don't get many 10s, or I wouldn't give many 10s for Sailor Progress Limbs flow, but this was perfect. Not a single hard start, skipping ever. The comfort of this pen is an 8. I think Progress Limbs are like 7.5, 8 for me, so I'm just gonna give this an 8. Okay. The next pen is my Leonardo Memento Zero Grande in the Mother of Pearl again. If you saw from my previous video, apparently this one was top 3 in terms of, you know, just all overall scores. For this one, I had Kobe Hime Ajisai, or Kobe Hydrangea. Such a lovely pink purple ink there. Let's see, I loved writing with it so much. As you can see, I decorated the pages for this hydrangea, and I typically write in cursive, but because this is a stub nib, I do like to write in regular print sometimes, and this is one of those times where it just looks so nice and clean and beautiful. I'll bring it up close here. You can see like there's just very, very few moments where there's dry shading going on. But for the most part, this ink is really wet, and so is the nib. I'm surprised this ink is so wet because there's a lot of properties to this ink. If you do a chromatography on this ink, you will see purples, pinks, a little bit of blue. It's just beautiful. So, beautiful ink color. Lovely to write with. For the ink, I'm going to give this ink a 10. It's just so lovely. And the flow, also a 10. It is definitely very wet, but it isn't overly gushing wet. So I feel like this nib and feed actually is very, very good for most inks. And I actually think it's not like a fire hose of an ink combo, because this ink is slightly drier, but like it's wet, but drier than most of the wet Kobe inks. And the comfort, of course, a 10. I love writing with this pen so much. Okay. The next one is the Pilot Vanishing Point Decimo in a fine nib with Iroshizuku Sunset Rose, which is a mixture of 3 colors from Pilot. With all the thinner pens, it just doesn't feel comfortable to me. It's just too thin, and this one is also slippery. It's all metal. Like the Pilot Vanishing Point Matte Black, that one is a metal pen, so it's very heavy. This one is very light, and it's also very thin. However, the nib writes so smoothly. It is almost too smooth. And I do love, you know, just the instant click. It's very convenient. Okay. It's very interesting because it's very pink right here, and then a little bit redder here, and then over here, like in the dried parts, it's like a burgundy dark red, and then slightly more red pink here. So like this ink changes quite a bit, and I feel like it's mainly because of the nib. I don't think this has the most airtight closure, So sometimes the ink does change its properties and colors because of the nib, but then this was also a mixture of 3 different inks, and so maybe it's showing all 3 properties. So who knows, but there was no issues with the ink flow or the ink causing issues to the pen. It wrote smoothly. There was no dryness, no hard starts, no skipping. So lovely ink and pen combination. Very wet pairing. For a fine nib. All right, so I'm going to give this ink color. It is not exactly what I had hoped for. I was hoping for like a rosy red. I will give this ink an 8. The flow is definitely a 10. No problems there. And the comfort of this pen, I'm going to give it a 6. I definitely don't like it. It's very uncomfortable for me. It hurts my my middle finger, and then the 2 fingers here have to hold onto this clip. It's a little awkward, but it's a good writer. It's a really good writer. If you like fine nibs, this fine nib is so smooth. The next pen is the TWSBI Eco Rose Gold Smoke, or Smoke Rose Gold. And I had this inked up with Ferris Wheel Press Chidori Cherry Blossom. Just look at that. That ink is so pretty in there. And it's a stub nib. It handled the ink very well. So I made this lovely journal entry with Chidori Cherry Blossom. If you haven't checked my Instagram, I just did a simple little reel over there. So this ink, let's see, yeah. The shimmer particles are very, very tiny. So I'm not sure if the light is showing the shimmers very well, but you could see here, yeah. Yeah, if I had better lighting, you can see. But the shimmer is so tiny that it's very well dispersed throughout the whole thing. There was not a single area of my writing that didn't have shimmer. So this Ferris Wheel Press shimmer ink is actually a very well distributed ink. However, it is very, very dry. So if you can see here, like it's a little bit more saturated up here, and then it gets really light right here, right? And then super saturated in this section because I primed the feed yet again. And over here, like it wrote really well, like until right here. And then I primed it again. And then that was just the ink dripping out when I was priming it. So it was really handy to have TWSBI's piston knob up here to just prime the feed every time I needed it to. And so because of that, I was able to have a nice, wet, beautiful shimmer ink experience. Outside of that, this very light part is not enjoyable. But if you like your inks super light and almost not legible, which is fine. Like some people do like their inks to be soft, dainty like this. But I like them more saturated, and this is like the kind of dusty pink that I like. Again, it's super light and delicate. So, but in the more saturated parts, like I just love it. It is legible. It is still dusty pink. Beautiful. Okay, so for this ink, beautiful ink to journal with. Difficult flow, very difficult after a few sentences. Okay. So for this ink, like it is a beautiful ink. It is super dry, but it's so beautiful. So I'm going to give it an 8. The beauty of this ink definitely outshadows the flow if you have it in the right pen. in the wrong pen, it is a misery. It is miserable to use this ink. The flow, I'm gonna give this in like a 7.5. Yeah, I had to prime the feed lots of times, but when I primed it, it is beautiful. The comfort of this pen, I'm gonna give this a 9. Yeah, it was nice, comfort, perfectly comfortable to write with. TWSBI Ecos are my favorite. TWSBI Ecos are my favorite TWSBIs, especially the rose gold. So I didn't buy the navy with the new trim, which is bronze, and because I don't think I need another TWSBI. Though if I did need another TWSBI, that's the one I would get. It's so beautiful, and I think everybody in the TWSBI community should definitely go for that one. If you want another TWSBI, it's just such a lovely color combination. Like, you can't really beat the white and smoke rose gold, and then they came up with navy with bronze. It's beautiful. Okay, and then the last one is the Leonardo Supernova Bohemian Twilight. Again, this one was one of the top 3 from last currently inked, and I had this inked up with Leonardo Noche Moscata. So for this one, I created a fall themed journal entry for this one. Absolutely loved the brown from this. This brown ink is just gorgeous. It sometimes it dries a little bit warmer, as you can see here. It is a little bit warmer of a brown here, and then over here it's a little bit cooler, a cooler brown. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. All right, so I gave the color of the ink, like the properties of the ink, a 9.5 because I just love this ink so much. I loved when I got the warm browns to show up. And then the flow of this pen and ink combo, I'm gonna give it an 11. Yeah, it is not a 10, it's an 11. It's way too wet. So this ink is probably a very wet ink. And this pen is a super, super wet elastic, extra fine. Way too wet. The comfort of this pen, a 9.5. All right. So this 11 doesn't mean that it's better than the rest of them. It just means that, like, a 10 means it's perfectly wet. And any more than that means it's too wet. And then like a 1 means it's so dry I can't even write with it. So in terms of the top 3, again, my Leonardo Memento Zero Grande, Mother of Pearl, 10 across the boards for this pairing. My favorite pairing for sure. And then the Leonardo Memento Zero Blue Aloha with Dominant Industry Lake. It was just such a consistent writer. Beautiful, beautiful ink color. That's just my color. So I'm definitely biased towards the color, but it was a very good ink. It's hard to find a third one. Like, they're all lovely. My experience with this one wasn't as good. Like, I love the color. It's comfortable, but it's way too wet. So that really did bring down the experience of the writing. And I can't say that this ink flow was a 1 because on the scale it is higher. I really want to say that is this one. This ink color really is a beautiful color. It made me really happy to do this journal entry, writing with this stub nib and this ink color. This was a great experience. These two were great experiences. Overall, I did have more fun with these ones, even though this one had a higher score than this one. These are my top 3 this month. My Leonardo Memento Zero Grande with the Kobe Hydrangea, Leonardo Memento Zero with Dominant Industry Lake, and my Conklin Duragraph with Waringul's Wuthering Heights. Let me know what your thoughts are on how I graded these things, and maybe if you disagreed with any of them, that's fine. Like, another part of me would disagree with me too. And I love having conversations where it's like, I think that one was a lot better actually. you know, I'm okay with that, those kinds of conversations. So disagree in a fun conversation way. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Again, if you, you know, oh.